Uh, all right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have a lot of content available to you. Listen, my name is Tony Martinez, and I am co-team leader of Extreme by LPT Realty. We decided to host this class because you can never get enough education, especially on a topic as important as condos. As we all know, we are going through one heck of a journey right now with condos and requirements and everything else. And it is an area of concern. It is also potentially an area of opportunity. I am especially pleased that it's Michelle teaching the class, Michelle Martinez, no relation that we know of anyway, no relation that we know of, but she's just an exceptional individual. And as a transaction coordinator, I don't think she has an equal. A few years ago, my wife and I, my partner and I, Gabi, learned the hard way that the hardest part of the transaction is really not getting the people under contract. You think it is, but the headaches and the landmines and all that typically happen from contract to close. And this is an area where I see so many agents, especially new ones, struggle because they're just not familiar with all the intricacies. And there's a part of me that says maybe that's a good thing, because aren't we better off just leaving that up to the experts and we focus on what we do best, which is listing and selling? So we made a decision years ago that for our team, we were going to make Michelle's services available at no cost to our agents so that we could close more deals. And we started seeing an immediate change in the number of transactions that just started falling off. So that is a huge, huge win for us. So if you're not currently using a transaction coordinator, you really need to look at it. It is not an expense, it is an investment, and an investment that will pay off handsomely for you. So with no further ado, I turn it over to the one and only Michelle Martinez.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm so excited to be with everyone this morning. This topic is near and dear to my heart. After spending so many years just being involved in the processing of paperwork, and especially when it comes to condos, homeowners associations, and in some instances, we do get to see those lovely co-ops right there in Broward County. It's a lot that can happen. There's a lot that can happen that can blow up your transaction, and it's literally not knowing what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. That is the lack of information that is needed in our community, which is why I created this course a few years ago. Because I was like, I thought everybody knew. No, I'm the nerd that reads all the statutes and tries to figure out how to make it work so that we get the associations to do what they need to do when they're open to doing what they need to do, as well as helping our sellers and buyers navigate through the process. So without further ado, welcome to Condos, Co-ops, and HOAs. Oh my. So today we are going to be reviewing the statutory, the municipal, and contractual best practices for properties within a government, a semi-government association, which is, or they're considered a quasi-governmental formation. And that is why I always tell everybody, hey, if you know the rules, you know how to make it work. So Tony did such a great job introducing me, but yes, my name is Michelle Martinez. I own and operate Hometown Transaction Coordinators since 2008. I've been a TC since contracts were 2 papers. One was the actual contract and the other one was carbon copy. So yes, that's a long time ago. And MLS was DOS. That was fine, you know, tap, next field. But through my career, I've helped real estate agents support over 10,000 transactions easily. 2008 was a really big time for me because I was in the REO field. And that is really where I got down and dirty with condos, because we were closing about 300 of them for Fannie Mae. And that is when I really, really had to learn, oh, these people don't listen. Why is that? And that's where I really got really interested in this way of preparing property. So our agenda today is, first, we're going to go through the foundational. How are they developed? What creates a condominium? What creates a HOA and what is the co-op? What are the differences and why does that even matter, knowing the differences of that? Well, at the end of the day, knowing the foundation and understanding the reasoning will help you understand how to navigate these processes. Really just learning their language. Why is it that this was the reason that they were developed this way is going to help you in navigating these processes for your buyers and sellers. So without further ado, development. A condominium in its most simplest form, you're going to have it. Sometimes it'll look very like I have a high-rise building, I have a garden apartment. It's got to be a condo, or maybe it's a conversion from an apartment building into a condominium. But in its form, a condominium, what they did to the restrictions or the bundle of rights on that land where it's built, they declared the developer or the person that transitioned it from an apartment building said, hey, we're going to make this a condominium. And what that means is that the community is owned by all of its owners. Everyone has a little piece of the land, a little piece of the amenities, the lobby, the elevator. Everyone owns that building. You have rights to your space, which is within the walls. And then the outside of those walls, let's say the doors, the hallways, in between your unit and the actual exterior wall, it's jointly owned. That's why when there's a leak in the building, everyone's like, did it come from the roof or the unit above? Who is really responsible for taking care of this leak? And that's why investigation discovery happens, and everybody's trying to figure out, is the association, meaning the collective, responsible for taking care of this, or is it the unit owner above, below, or beside? That could be the reason that this is happening. You know, maintenance is a thing, it's a requirement, and everybody should be taking care of their plumbing within their walls, but sometimes they do not, and it's okay, we're human. But that is the reason why so much happens when these leaks. That's when you really notice, like, oh, we're all responsible for some things, right? So that's what the condominium is. The condominium is you as the owner have rights to your own space. That's yours. But outside of that, that is collectively owned with everybody that owns a unit in that building. Everybody has a right to that space. Within a cooperative, it's incredibly different. It's so different because it's run as a business. So as a co-op, the building itself is actually, the real property is considered a company. And everybody in that company owns a portion, a share of that company, and they have they are given a certificate of proprietary lease to live in their unit. It's crazy. So all I can tell you is migration patterns. We are what we like to call heaven's waiting room, right? People are coming from all over the United States to come and retire in Florida. And because of that, they bring their customs. These customs are customary in the Northeast United States. You see them in New York, New Jersey, you see them in Pennsylvania. Cooperatives are a thing. And they brought this custom down to South Florida. And you see them a lot in Hollywood, Lauderdale by the Sea, those markets, Pompano Beach. You'll see co-ops, and you'll probably see them beachfront. And they're really affordable until you understand, hey, it's a cash purchase. You're buying a certificate for a company. You're going to have a lease for your unit while you live here. And then people are like, say, what now? It's still an ownership type. It's the way that they develop that land. But the most difference is with a condo, you own the air between your walls. This is your unit. It has your name on it. You can do as you please. Within the co-op, you have shares and a proprietary lease. That's the difference. They may look the same, but they're just governed differently. Okay. Then we have homeowners or homeowners association or parcel owners. When you look at your legal description, that's going to tell you right away what the property is being, if it's being governed. And why they call it parcel owners is because you own everything within your lot and your block when you are governed as a homeowners association. It may have a gate, it may not have a gate. It just could be like, hey, we're all coming together, we're all pitching in 25 bucks so that the neighborhood looks nice all the time. It could be as simple as that, or it could also be more complicated. Everybody wants to restrict who lives in their community, how the walls, I mean, not the walls, but um, the visual aspects of the community, everybody has to come together and vote upon so that we're all in the same page. There's architectural requests and things of that nature. So it could be simple, it could be complicated, but however, a homeowners association owns their property and everything within their fence or their lot and block in the legal description. In the legal description for a condo, it will say condo. The same with a cooperative, it will say co-op. I say that because there have been people that see, oh, it's an HOA and it's a two-story townhouse and automatically assume that it's an HOA. But then when you look at the legal description, it says it's governed as a condominium. So they own their air rates within their first, second, third story condo as it's considered to the developer. And then everything outside of it, maybe the roof, maybe the exterior walls, it all depends on what they decided that condominium was going to be governed as. That was going to be the difference, right? I say all this just to say that look at your legal description. Don't just take your visual cues as the guidance, because there have been villas, single family homes that are also being governed as a condominium. And that is quite funny. You're like, oh, it's a condo? Yes. The legal description will tell you. And that means what your ownership rights are to what your bundle of rights is going to look like for that particular parcel. All in all, when it comes to these quasi-governmental associations, they govern themselves. And because they've set themselves apart by either calling themselves a condominium association, a cooperative association, or a homeowners association, they are allowed to set rules. And this makes it their club. If you want to join this neighborhood, if you want to join this community, you have to adhere to our rules. So whenever you see an association, I want you to always remember that. It's their club, their rules. How do we play in the sandbox with all these people to make things happen? So for our next part, we're going to be going knee deep into the statutory and contractual requirements. And this is where we're going to be going really into the new changes that came into in December. And it's all growing from what happened a few years ago in Champlain Towers. So first, statutorily, they are right now still in session, updating the statutes, because so many things have happened since the fall of the Champlain Towers in Surfside that condos specifically have a very huge spotlight on them as people are trying to make it not so, what's the word that I'm looking for? They don't want it to, they wanted to mystify what a condominium is, what the requirements are for them. But as a whole, and I encourage you to read the statutes. It's a few pages, it's not light reading, but it will give you what they are supposed to be doing according to the law of the land, which is Florida. So for condominiums, it's Florida Statute 718. Co-ops are 719, and homeowners association is 720. So when we look at the statutory requirements when it comes to the selling and listing of real estate property, it's very clear who are the responsibilities are for each of these governing types. So as a real estate professional and you're consulting with your customers and you're looking at these legal descriptions and you're like, oh, you're governed as a condominium. Oh, great. Let's start talking about your association. What is the rules to this club that we are going to be trying to sell here? So what you should know from a condominium standpoint when you're selling and listing property, the seller is responsible for providing governing documents and financials to buyers upon written request. Now, with the new changes, which we're going to be looking at now, it automatically is a written request for documents. FAR in their form says it's a request. In the statute, it says it's an unwaivable and unvoidable right. That's important because back in 2008 to 2011, the banks were saying, hey, it's your responsibility. I got this from foreclosure. It's not my responsibility to give you documents. If you want them, go buy it from the association. And then it became undrake. What's the word in English? It became a way for these associations that were not having or gaining funds from owners, a way to sell them for high amounts of money to the public, and it was unnecessary to do that. So even though the bank or the new owner was the bank, they had a right to those documents, and those documents had to be presented to the buyer so that they knew their club, their rules, and what was important here. So what they did was, when they established this rule, is made it the seller's responsibility because they are current members, paid members of the association, and they should always have the right to review and look at the documents in the way that they have required the community to be to function and to process everything within that community. So that's why it became the seller's responsibilities and at their cost. Next, the buyer's right is unwaivable, and that means that no matter what, even if you sign a little piece of paper that says, yeah, I feel like I'm good, I've lived here for dozens of years as a renter, I don't need these documents. No, you can't waive the right to look at these documents. You don't know if anything has changed. Everything has to be actualized at the point of time that you're purchasing. So you must receive these documents so that you are fully aware of what you're walking into, right? Another right that the statute says, and I want that to be very important, these are rights. They cannot be taken from the customer. So the buyer has the right to void the contract if any of the documents that are listed as a requirement to be provided to the buyer are not provided. They have the right all the way to the date of closing. The moment they consummate the sale, it's done. You, as an adult, made an adult choice to keep moving forward. Fantastic. So there's nothing else to be said there, but you had this right. Once the buyer does receive every document on the list, which is quite extensive, then the buyer has a 3 business day right to review and rescind. That means that they get to review the articles, the bylaws, the rules and regulations, the financials, the budget. I want to know how you came to this budget and how you actually spend your money and what does that mean. The one thing that you do not see as a requirement is the meeting minutes. So the meeting minutes will tell you if there's anything coming up for vote in the community for special assessments. And that's really important that at some point it gets written in to the contract as a best practice that the buyer has the right to review the last year's meeting minutes. You never know what has been discussed or what's coming up to vote. So that's always a good thing to always have in your contracts. All right, moving into the cooperatives. So the co-ops, the seller is responsible for providing governing documents to the buyer upon written request as well, but the buyer's not entitled to receive the financial statements. And that's what makes a difference from a condo. A condo, you have the right to review the financial statements. I get to look at the budget and the way that you spend your money so that I know that you are not, that this community is fiscally well. In a cooperative, you do not have a right to review the financials. As a corporation, those belong to the corporation and they do not feel that it's right to share that information. It's weird. I'm here like, how do I come in here and invest in a company and I don't know if you are spending your money right? But it's written there that it's not a right that you have. Can you ask for them in the contract and the seller share them? Absolutely. But it's not something that you can say, hey, Florida statute says that I can have a copy of this as a potential purchaser for this community. It's not something that's backed. All right, just like a condo, buyer has a 3 business day right to review rescind period once they receive all of the delineated docs for the cooperative. They get to review, they get to ask their questions, they get to do their due diligence on the community. And if everything that they have is all good and dandy, adults make adult choices, we keep moving forward. Okay. Now, with a homeowners association, when it comes to the buying and selling and listing of property, the requirement is the HOA disclosure summary, which is actually when we are looking at Writer B, which is the homeowners association, it's the first page. That first page that says this association is named this. This is what you need to know about our dues. Do we have any leaseholds? All the pertinent information about the HOA is in that first page when it comes to the financial obligations of being in this community. That is the requirement by statute. There is no requirement for the seller to provide the governing documents for the HOA. If the buyer wishes to review the governing documents, it's at their expense if they want to do that. So the HOA writer is very clear. The HOA statute is very clear. All you have right to is this summary, letting you know what's your financial responsibility coming into this community. But when it comes to the governing documents, if you don't write it in, hey, seller is going to give the governing documents to the buyer within X amount of time, and the seller agrees, the seller doesn't have to agree because it's not a requirement for them. All they have to give you is that summary. And it's very specific that that summary has to be available to the buyer before they make an offer. That is the statute. It has to be available to the buyer before they make an offer. If they receive it during the offer process, they have a 3 business day right to review and rescind the community. So documenting when they received the HOA disclosure summary is very important. When we get into best practices, I'll let you know how to make sure that you're covering your behind on that. But it's very important that you know that little piece of legislation. Have I seen files cancel because we didn't have them? Yes. Yes, I have. I have seen people who are like, wait a minute, there's an HOA. Oh, I didn't know. Ah, okay. Here's what you need to know. Here's your disclosure summary. And then they're like, you know what, I'm out. And you're like 2 days away from closing. So always knowing the governing type, always knowing how to protect yourself as an agent, the brokerage, and the customer is very important because these all are very finite in the way that they can be maneuvered. All right. So municipally, we're going to be focusing on Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. We have the statutes, which is the law of the land, and then you have municipal ordinances, which are established by the county or the city in which the property is located. The cities get involved or the counties get involved when they start receiving complaints. That's when things happen. They're like, hey, we're receiving a lot of complaints about the applications. People are not receiving responses. And that's why they decide, hey, in this city, in this town, in this county, we're going to make this ordinance regarding applications. We're going to make this ordinance about fees. Way back when things were the wild, wild west in South Florida, these ordinances had to come by because we had applications that would take 120 days for a response from the board. Mind you, some of these boards were being, taken apart, new property managers coming in, and then we had contracts that are getting extended and extended because of third-party issues. So the counties were like, hey, people are saying they're losing their deposit because they signed an agreement that they would get an approval by this time, but the association wasn't responding. So all of these things were creating such havoc that the ordinances started to come out. So in Miami-Dade County, they established an ordinance that an application has to have a response within 45 days. So if the application says, hey, we're going to respond in 30 business days, they're in compliance. If they say we're going to do that in 45 business days, they're in compliance. The moment they say, oh, we're going to do that in 60 calendar days, excuse me, the county says that you have to respond within 45 days. Now, I point the word days because it doesn't say business or calendar, it just says days. So as long as they say under or at 45 business or calendars, they're good to go, right? Anything outside of that, it's like, hey, you're kind of like out of the limits of what the county says we need to do. So can you let us know that this can happen faster? Um, the same thing that they were getting a lot of complaints for were fees. Fees such as, um, you know, the association application fees were becoming exorbitant. And I'm going to tell you right now, they're still exorbitant. And there's a reason why. The county ordinance says that the association cannot charge more than $100 for an application, for a screening application for the customer. That's what the county ordinance says. However, it says the association. It did not lock in the property management firm. So when you see an application that says, hey, you're going to send ABC Homeowners Association $100, and then you're going to pay DDZ property management firm $200 for the processing of that application, the association's in compliance. Is it right? Nah, that's up for debate. Who wants to pay $300 for an application? But that is, again, their club, their rules, and they are within compliance of the county ordinance. Should they? I don't think it's right. People are just trying to find a place to live and house themselves, and taking that opportunity to tack on a ton of fees, rush fee this, do that. It just doesn't feel right in my spirit that that is what happens. But at the end of the day, their club, their rules, and this is the way in, then you do what they say, right? As long as they are within compliance, there's really nothing else that you can do. So Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County are all basically similar when it comes to the fees that can be charged by the association to process an application. The only difference is that in Palm Beach, there's a 30-day turnaround time for any application that's required. Again, if it's business or calendar, they're in compliance. But all in all, this is how the municipalities have put in their 2 cents when it comes to the association. Another ordinance that was passed and is coming up this year to be in compliance is in Miami-Dade County. They passed an ordinance requiring all associations to deposit their documents in the county recorder's office that is available for search from the community. Is it fully built out? No. Does it have all the documents? No. So right now people are filing extensions and not putting in their things because, hey, if we don't have to, if it's not being enforced, the government is super bloated and everything works at a snail pace. Is it a great idea? Yeah, it's a great idea for a place for everyone to go and look at documents, especially for, FAQs that have to be updated annually. The enforcement of that is very important because right now I'm still getting, oh, here's your frequently asked questions from 2016. And I'm like, the statute says you have to update this document every year. Every year, the frequently asked questions has to be updated, just like the budget, because fees do not remain the same. I think I got one from 1992 and it said that the fees for the unit was like $200. I was like, hey, is this still accurate for today? And they were like, I was like, you're giving me a document from 1992 when this was supposed to be updated and actualized for 2024. The reason that it needs to be actualized is because the unit amounts that are noted in this form obviously get updated throughout time, and they should be updated so that people are aware what the responsibilities are for every line. But I digress. That is the bane of my existence, and I'm always just really hunting down that document. All right, so let's get into the fun stuff, because as real estate professionals, contractually, you want to know what your customer is responsible for in the process, whether they're the buyer or the seller. A lot of the riders or addenda that get attached to the contract in section 19 are referencing the legislation entirely. They reference, here's a statute that goes with that, that part of the addenda. Why we're asking it? Because we need to comply with this part of the statute and that part of the statute. So if you look, especially now the latest version from December 2024, it is riddled with statutes. Riddled. Like there every 2 seconds you're like, oh, it's this statute and that's it. They do that because it's important for everybody to know that we are complying with the law of the land of Florida. Okay. So with condos, again, just like you saw when we were reviewing the statutory requirements, it's reflected in the rider addenda for it. So for condos, it would be rider A. I am referencing the FAR bar contracts, which is utilized by 99% of our population. I have not seen a crisp contract in so long. And frankly, please don't use it. It does not have any protections that we are used to. So continue to use the FAR bar until something better comes through from the Florida Association of Realtors. So the condo writer said seller has to initiate the approval process. What does that mean? The seller, when they accept a buyer, needs to reach out to their association and say, hey, I sold my unit. I need an application. What do you need from me? And I need to get this over to the buyer because they have, if you left the default, 5 days to apply to the association and they need to give it to them ASAP. That is what the writer says. The seller communicates with the association and lets them know they're selling their unit and this is what's going on, right? I need to get an application over to the buyer so that it alerts the association, hey, the unit is being sold. Hopefully we did that from beforehand so that we know if they have a first right of refusal, which is that second part of the condominium rider, the proper notices were given to the association if that was the case. That's first. Second, and this is a huge one, the contract is terminated if the approval is not received by the deadline associated or noted in the contract and the buyer receives their deposit. What does that mean? So most contracts that I see when they have a condominium, they leave the blanks and an application is required. Seller is going to initiate in 5 days and buyer is going to apply. Buyer agrees they will get their approval within blank days of closing date. If you leave those two blank, it says 5 days and 5 days. 5 days before closing, 5 days after effect. That's what it says. So 5 days before closing date, if the buyer has not received their certificate of approval from the association, at 12 o'clock, at midnight, that contract is terminated unless you have extended the term or amended the term. That is what the writer says. If they did not get it, you have a fully canceled, terminated contract because of that language in the writer. And I stress that enough because I always tell people, it's like, hey, you're going to be canceled at 12 o'clock if we don't amend this. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, here's where it says in that first section of the writer, the last sentence says, if the approval is not received by deadline, the contract is terminated, the deposit is returned. Nothing else, nothing more. There's no more discussion. It didn't ask for permission. No one has to sign the release and cancellation. The writer did it for you. So I always tell everybody, keep a good look on your deadline for the condo writer, because then you're going to have to, reaffirm the contract, make your amendments, do all the things so that everybody knows, hey, we understand this lapse. We need to get it right. It's just more paperwork, but at the end of the day, have I gotten people out with this clause? Yes, all the time. All the time. I tell them, hey, if you really need to get out of here, if you don't get your certificate in time, the contract is going to terminate anyway, and you get your deposit back. Period. The same with sellers. They want to get out of the contract. I was like, wait, if they don't get their certificate in time, The contract terminates anyway, and you're out of the contract, and you do not have to reinstate it because they didn't get their approval in time. So people, these are clauses to get out of the contract, and people do use them effectively. Another statement within the condominium rider is that seller is liable for full special assessments if not disclosed. The little lines on page 2 about special assessments and litigations are incredibly important. When these documents are being completed or filled out, one, they should be filled out by the seller, not by the agent, not by the buyer. They cannot disclose themselves. Not from details from the MLS. It's not warranted. If you want to protect the transaction, the seller, the actual member of the association should be completing these documents. They should be calling the HOA and saying, hey, friend, I'm selling my unit and I have a few questions. Let me know about this, that, and the other, because we know people mean well, but they don't go to their board meetings. They're not fully abreast of what's going on. And if they don't ask the questions, they don't get full clarity. How are you going to be able to navigate this successfully for them to sell their unit? And how can you properly disclose your buyer if you don't have the full details? Because again, it's not standard. It's their club, their rules. So knowing this information right off the bat is going to save a lot of heartache and time, because time is precious. It's the one thing you can't get back. It sucks when you lose money, but it sucks even more when you lose time. So knowing special assessments, they have to be disclosed. They have to be properly outlined so that people are aware, hey, our structural came back and it looks like we're going to have to do XYZ to the building. The concrete restoration is going to cost this much. All these little periquitos that come out and people need to take care of. That is, everybody needs to know, hey, you're probably going to end up paying another $1,000 every other month until we pay off the special assessment. Say what now? Let's talk about this a little bit more, right? Adults are making adult choices, and we need to make sure that they have full understanding of what's going on in the community. So for the co-op addendum, we use co-op 1. That is the FAR document that attaches to the FAR bar contract. So if you go to Form Simplicity or Dotloop and you're looking at the Florida Interactive Forms, you're looking for co-op 1. I know that co-ops are not sold often. It's not something that you run into all the time, but that is the form that you use in order to sell the unit. And then that addendum is going to note basically the same things that are in the state statute. You're not going to get the financials. You need to go out and apply. You need to do all these wonderful things to pass over the documents. And in the co-op, the seller doesn't initiate the approval process. The buyer does. The buyer has to connect with the community and start the process themselves. That's a very huge difference. The seller is only obligated to give documents and contact information, but the buyer has to initiate the approval process with the cooperative. One of the things that I can tell you, the co-op is not a typical approval process. You are not going to see like a lot of standard language. The cooperatives, the board of that cooperative, they're funny. They got these customs that they brought from the Northeast, and they have these in-person interviews and all these restrictions on how to become part of this community. So it's good to know as much as possible as the listing agent so you can find the right fit buyer for that community. So that when you tell the buyer, hey, you're going to have a 720 score, you're going to have assets in the amount of X amount of dollars in the bank account, and you need to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Are you able to overcome these hurdles or requirements for this community? If not, I think you need to find someplace else because their club, their rules, right? With an HOA, a homeowners association, which in South Florida, the most that you're going to be running into are the condos and the HOAs. It's either one or the other. There are over 300 communities with homeowners associations in South Florida alone. So you're going to be running into them a lot. And a lot of people are electing that they were not HOAs before, but are deciding to come together to govern as anyway, just for a few, people want to beautify the community and make sure that their neighbors all think like themselves, right? It just is what it is. So when it comes to the homeowners association, the writer and the contract says the seller has to initiate the approval process. Just like the condominium, the seller is responsible to contact the HOA and confirm if there is a screening process, what that application is, who needs to pay for it, what needs to happen, and all the good things. If there's things that they need to sign, they need to sign that and make sure that everybody has their information because they are initiating and saying, we're selling, here's the buyer. Do we need to sign anything for the association to get these things running and good to go? In the Writer B Homeowners Association, the only one that has that first requirement is the seller. The seller initiates the approval process, period. It does not say that the buyer has to apply. I get a lot of people say, hey, the buyer's application was due at XYZ time. And I'm here like, I'm sorry, no. All it says is that the seller had to initiate the approval process by X date. We received the application, we're good to go. I will inform you when the buyer has applied. The second term for the approval process is for the buyer. And the term says that the buyer has to receive their approval by a specific period of time. So best practice is, hello, ring, ring, association. How long is the approval process? By when do we need to submit our application in order to get our approval by X date? And then that way you're in compliance, right? Because you made sure to contact, find out the details, and make sure, hey, the last date you can submit your application to get your approval within that time period. Because again, folks, if we leave it blank, it says you're going to get it 5 days before closing date. So if you do not get it 5 days before closing date, I feel about it. If you do not get your approval within 5 days before closing date, it's not like a condo. It doesn't terminate the contract. It says the buyer has a right to terminate the contract if not received by deadline and get their deposit back. Now, what have I seen in practices? Now people are looking at timelines. They're like, wait a minute, we were supposed to be closing. And when did you submit your application? Because I sent it to you on this date. And when people see that people are walking out of a contract, now the dates matter. They're no longer a suggestion. Now they're the requirement and the standard of the contract. So super important to do as much as possible when you're on the buyer side to confirm when the application had to be in. If the association is late and the buyer wants to walk, that's their prerogative. They have a right to, but at least when it comes to timing, they did everything that they were supposed to, right? The same as when you're with the seller. When you're with the seller and you know, hey, this association has a 45 business day turnaround time. When you're negotiating that contract, come on, you know the timing already. You're going to say, hey, we're going to amend this date. We're going to amend this document. We're going to do this because you want to make sure that your seller has the tightest and best contract for the purposes that you're trying to sell this unit. You're not trying to sell it 20 times. You want to sell it once, right? So knowing as much as possible, and I stress this so much, the more you know about that community, the more you know how to navigate and make sure that things go in the way that they need to. You're playing by their rules, so you need to know what those rules are so you can navigate that process for your seller and your buyer. That's the most important part. Don't find out while you're under contract. Make sure you're finding out before that happens so that you can say, okay, our contract needs to be like this because you are the one that creates the story for the buyer and seller. You with your other counterpart, with your colleague, you're coming together and you're setting the pace, the voice, and the tone of the transaction. So together, make sure that it's one that will facilitate a smooth and peaceful transaction for both buyer and seller. Make it so pleasant that they sit there and go, wow, that was a really enjoyable experience. I felt supported. I knew exactly what needed to happen. I knew everything that I was responsible for. And I was able to sell. I was able to buy in peace. I call that an A1 testimonial right there. When you provided such a service that people were not able to get stressed. We're talking about lots of money, so there is some tension and stress a little surrounding that, but don't let it be the association. They're a third party, you don't control them, but you can learn how to navigate the process so that they are feeling supported throughout. All right, so the big updates that came through in December 2024. So this is for Writer A, the condominium writer. The Board of Realtors, the Florida Association of Realtors late last month had a huge meeting and sat with everyone about these updates. I sat in that class, many sat in that class because the form went live and we're like, wait, what are all these reports? What are all these things that are now added in here? And now we have to, what we knew from before, we had to expand because now there's more protections required during this process, especially when it comes to condominiums. Now, this doesn't apply to units under 2 to 3 stories. I think 3 stories, it depends if it's by the ocean. And I'm going to make sure that everybody has those in the cheat sheet so you can see the difference between both. But once you're getting into more than 3 stories, there's requirements. The closer you are to the ocean, there's more requirements. It's all about timing. It's all about knowing who's responsible for what and where. Why I tell everybody, hey, and if any of you are all or most of you are in LPT, they're starting to ask for Section 10 to be fully completed. Because we've been getting contracts that did not have it completed. They were like, yeah, I don't know, it's new. They weren't answering it and they weren't doing it. So LPT compliance is asking for Section 10 to be completed, disclosures done. And so what the milestone inspection report is saying, hey, we're falling under guideline for milestone inspection. And it is required for us to have it, and we have it, and here's the report. Or we haven't finished the report, but here's letting you know that we have to do it. So the milestone inspection report and the structural integrity reserve study, these are requirements that came out in 2023. And everybody was like, what is this? This is a response by government for the collapse of the Champlain Towers in 2021. It was a very heart-wrenching situation that happened. Lots of people lost their lives in Surfside. There's still people, it impacted many. It impacted so much. And it was when people were like, oh my God, the salt corrodes the building. There was cracks. There was the deferred maintenance. All these big words were being thrown around. And people lost their lives because a mixture of lots of bad things happening. They didn't want to have reserves. People had the right to vote not to have them. They didn't have enough money to fix the building. The city wasn't doing their part in enforcing certain statutes and requirements. It was the mix of too many wrong decisions that resulted in people losing their lives. So the government, as the government does, kick back and say, hey, we're going to make this a requirement that now buildings that live within, I think the mileage is within 15 to 20 miles from the ocean, they need to have the SIRS within every 25 years updated so that everybody knows that the integrity of the structure is still sound. That's all that it's doing there. They want to make sure that the integrity of the structure, the mechanicals, the things that run that building, that community are sound and still operational. So that if the salt is doing what the salt does, which is eat away at that lovely concrete and eat away at all the things, because that's what salt does, people are aware and they're able to make quick decisions to keep everybody safe, right? So the same with the milestone, it has its own requirements of when the association must complete these reports. Engineers, which right now we're having We don't have enough engineers, unfortunately, to service all these requests, and we have delays in some of these reports being provided. So the association has to give us the yes, we have it, no, we don't, yes, we need it, but this is what you need to know about this report, when we're going to have it, when the engineer is going to finalize the reports. A big one that turned up now is the turnover inspection. And the turnover inspection is their response to, wow, we don't have a baseline. We don't have a baseline as to how this building was supposed to be taken care of. Because, you know, when bad things happen, everybody's pointing their fingers and you should have done this and everybody should have done more. And then as more lawsuits are coming in, they're like, well, how do we know how the building was supposed to be maintained? And that was the result of this new legislation adding in the turnover inspection. And what it means is, if your building, the building that you live in, the developer turned or gave the building over to its members. Because remember, the development and the reasoning of a condominium is that everyone in that building owns a little bit of everything in that building, in that community. You own a little bit of the amenities, the elevator, the walls, the this, the that, the common areas. When the developer sold that the unit, I am done here, guys. Here's your community. Now you take care of it. I am turning over this building over to its owners. Now you are going to take care of it. The developer also has to give in this inspection report. And that inspection report is saying, this is the type of cement we use. These are the type of plumbing we have. This is the maintenance requirements. This is when these things need to be taken. This is how you take care of what I built. So right now we have a crap ton of buildings that are coming up and super expensive. I mean, I don't know how many cars. I got a Mercedes building, an Aston Martin building, all these different buildings named after cars coming in. And I'm here like, wow, people are buying $10 million units by the bay. This is fantastic. Well, now those wonderful buildings, the Mr. C residence in Coconut Grove, all these buildings now that are being built have to give over this inspection report. The idea behind all this, once the developer leaves, is that the people, the community, knows how to maintain the property. You have to assume that none of the members of that association are an engineer and going to sit there and say, hey guys, we gotta, we gotta take care of that because we're by the salt area. Like, people are people, and people are going to people, right? They're going to live their lives. They're going to think, hey, we're part of this association. They're taking care of it. We're good. I send them over my check. We're sitting pretty here, right? No, the developer is now responsible when they say, hey, we're done with the work we came to do. Enjoy this community that we have built for you. Enjoy the amenities and all the great things. Aquí tú tienes. Here's how you maintain this community. Now we have baseline. This is how it was given to you. This is what the materials were. This is how you maintain this. And in that way, when you get your milestone, they have something to refer to. This is how it was on the day when it was turned over from the developer to what we have right now. Is it corroding? Do we need to update this? Do we need to change this? Now the engineer has a report to work from. They're not creating the first. They're updating. And they're saying, hey, the life of the cement, the life of the water heaters, the mechanicals, the this, the that, everything is good. We have still life in this building, or we need to start restoration process. Everything has life, and we're just trying to maintain it. Okay, so the same with the structural integrity. We covered that as well. Those were the updates. Here, if anything is marked yes in 10A, B, and C, just like the governing documents, which is page 2, section 5 says the buyer has the right to receive governing documents, and these are the documents that need to be turned over. Now 10D says if anything up there is yes, The buyer has a right to get a current copy of these inspected prepared summaries of anything that's been marked yes. And they need to have that right. They have the 3 business day right to review of these reports. And if something in their little heart says, you know what, I don't feel comfortable, they're able to get out. So in 11, this one was actually a conundrum to me because I kept reading it and rereading it. And I was like, what is this for? Why is this there? Why do they have this? Condominiums created with a portion of a building or within a multiple parcel building. And I was like, is it for mixed use buildings? What is this for? And then when I sat with the class that they did in last month with FAR, this disclosure in the condominium writer is for condo docs. I mean, not condo docs, condo tells, condo conversions. Because again, the government gets involved when people start receiving a lot of complaints. And the complaints that they were receiving was, hey, why am I paying for the amenities for the hotel? Why am I paying for this for the hotel? The hotel makes its money. Why does me that I own a unit here and they rent it out for me and do all these beautiful things for me? I'm paying a management service for that. Why am I also paying for the structural updates and all these other things for the hotel? It's a business. It should be able to take care of itself. And unfortunately for you, the way that the condo tells governing body is created, everyone that owns the units is also responsible for this expense for the hotel that's also associated with it, which is mind blowing. So this is just letting you know, hey, you're going to be responsible for common elements. You're going to be responsible for restoration of the buildings because you are housed within this property. So that is the disclosures for condo tells. Super interesting. Definitely read more into what is the requirement for this, because at the end of the day, if you do sell condo tells, there's still quite a few of them in South Florida. This disclosure is for them. It's letting them know, hey, you are going to have, as these buildings mature, you're going to have these shared expenses with the hotel. So make sure you look at your governing documents and know what your responsibilities are for that. All right, so we're getting into the best practices of our session. Before we get into the Q&A, we're making great time. So best practices, I've been harping on it quite a bit. And more importantly, I want to drill in. The more information you have, the better it is for you. As a listing agent, as a buyer's agent, the more information that you have, the more you can navigate and do the best for your client and advocate for their behalf. If you're with the seller and they have a condominium, a co-op, or an HOA, start digging and getting as much as possible with the seller. Ask them to get the condo disclosure completed. Make sure that condo disclosure is attached to the MLS as a supplement for those to view. Have the condo association contact information on a one sheet on the MLS, telling everybody, hey, this is who you need to contact for all your questions. I can do the best that I can with what I've asked, but you're probably going to have more questions. And as a potential purchaser, you have a right to information, and here's who you need to contact, because that's their jurisdiction, their club, their rules. They know it better than I do. Have the disclosures completed, have all the details ready to go so that when you get that offer, you say, hey, did you review the condo writer on the MLS? Are you using it? I need you to use it because the seller prepared that. The seller gave you everything that you needed to do to know about the condo so that you were fully aware of what needed to happen. 2, special assessments, try to get as much as possible at the beginning. Find a game plan with your seller and say, hey, are you willing to pay this off? It's going to make it very, very nice for people that this would be paid off. If it makes sense. If they're asking for boatloads of cash and the seller just doesn't have it, they don't have it. And then that's just a, hey, the buyer's going to have to assume the special assessment. Adults make adult choices. If they really want it, when people really want something, they will do whatever it takes. And the right fit buyer will come and say, hey, I really want this unit. And yes, I'm willing to pay for the special assessments. Give me some consideration on this thing, and we're good. But you gave everyone the details. We're not finding out 15 days into the transaction that all this is happening. And everyone goes, well, we didn't know. How could you not know? You were listing it for 100 days before it got under contract, and you didn't think to question the association at any point. This third party that has to approve the sale in order for it to go, you didn't think to call them and find that out. Ooh. And I'm not saying anything, but yes, we do have those agents out there that sign the listing agreement, put it in the market, and then pray to God that everything is fine and we get to closing. And it happens. I know we're all not going to work the same way. So that is why when you're on the buyer side, best practice is ask all the questions. Ask all the questions. And if the listing agent is not prepared or doesn't have the details, give me the contact information for the association. I want to make sure that my buyer's experience purchasing this unit is as easy as possible. People are incredibly, and especially in South Florida, they are incredibly, damn it, I lost the word, superstitious. Things become a little too hard, a little tough, and they're like, I'm out. God doesn't want this for me. It's not for me. I'm not up for this. You know, we want to avoid the challenges as much as possible. And the only way to do that is to get as much information as possible from the beginning. So as a buyer's agent, yes, call the listing agent, start having those conversations, asking the questions. If you don't have it, can you give me the contact information for the association? I want to make sure that we have the right timing for the approval process. If there's a first right of refusal, what does that look like? First right of refusal is very common in downtown Miami. There are a lot of buildings that have first right of refusal. And that means that when the condominium association receives the notice from the seller, hey, I'm selling my unit and this is the price that I'm listing it for. Does anybody want it? And they are able to say yes or no. And then when you get a contract, that contract needs to go back to the board, and the board needs to say, hey, you know what? Or there's someone in the community say, hey, you know what? I want to buy that unit for the terms that are already negotiated there. So when that happens, now our buyer is out the way and the association member comes in. That doesn't mean that you didn't, that you lose your commission. When the association takes over a contract, you're still the buyer's agent. You're still the one that negotiated the terms, and you're still going to get paid. However, the buyer's name changes. That's it. So knowing a lot of these things up front is going to save a lot of heartache at the end. Knowing if there's income requirements, credit requirements, asset requirements. I'm seeing a lot of, hey, I need you to have at least $25,000 in savings. I need you to have 20% on the contract. There's a lot of periquitos, rules that people are putting in these communities in order to get the right fit neighbor for their community, if that makes sense. They can't really discriminate, but they sure can put the established practices of what they are accepting into their community and what's acceptable and still in alignment with fair housing. But again, quasi-governmental, their club, their rules, know the rules when you're walking in. That way you can navigate the process for your customer. Again, try to request the last 6 to 12 meeting minutes. That's going to tell you what's up for vote, what's being discussed, what people really are trying to do within this community. If they're going to, resurface the pool. Oh, that's an expense. You have 3 Olympic pools, all of them, right? What's that going to look like? What is the fee for that? And who's going to pay for it? Do we have the reserves and all the good questions? If you're financing the transaction, also you want to know if the financials and budgets are healthy for this community. One of the 2024 updates to um, the the governing documents was the addition of the budget. The budget was not the requirement before; it was the year-end financial statement. So once the year-end financial statement was given, they didn't have to give you the budget. Just people got used to asking for the budget, and then they were just giving the budget and thinking that that's the financials. No, the year-end financial statement says how we spent the money. The budget is how we plan to use the money, right? So knowing the difference is important because now you have a statutory right to vote. I want to know how you use it and how you plan to use it. I can't wait if they make a requirement that you need to get the meeting minutes too, because that's going to always be an eye opener. If they're increasing if they're voting to increase the dues, I had a building really at the end of the year just say, hey, we're increasing all dues 6%. And it's going to happen in second quarter. If we didn't have the meeting minutes, we wouldn't have known. The buyer wouldn't have known that they were increasing the dues at 6% starting April 1st. And this was at the beginning of the year. But the agent had the good sense to say, hey, in additional terms and conditions, I need the last year's meeting minutes to know what's going on. Because that's going to tell you what they're planning. What's up for vote? What are they thinking about doing? It's not written in stone yet unless they've actually voted and passed. But the discussions are there. So you're basically a fly on the wall reading your meeting minutes and knowing what's going to happen. The same with a co-op, have the seller call, obtain all required documents, requirements, applications, everything that you can at the start. It's incredibly important to have as much detail as possible, especially for cooperative. They're not a very standard process. And so knowing as much details as you can for the people that are going to be moving into this community, the better. These are usually cash transactions. So assets are very important to these corporations. Credit scores are very important to these corporations. So knowing this right off the bat will save a lot of heartache on any denials in the future. So with the homeowners association, as I stated before, the HOA disclosure summary has to be presented to the buyer before they make an offer. The disclosure summary has to be on the MLS or somewhere readily available so that you can say, hey, you're submitting an offer, great, here's your disclosure summary. One of the things that we do here when we're launching listings on an HOA, we attach it to showing time. So when the appointment is confirmed, not only do they get the beautiful brochure from the agent, they also get the HOA disclosure summary. And it copies us that it was sent. So that, guess what? You just have confirmation that they got this disclosure summary before they made the offer. The same with the MLS. When you upload it into supplements, you don't have a confirmation that they have it, like the showing time attachments. However, you can point to, hey, that disclosure summary was available when you were making your appointment. That's why I like the showing time confirmation better, because at least you can copy yourself on every appointment that gets confirmed and that they got all the documents that you wanted them to have from the beginning. Even your association one sheet. You can attach up to 5 documents as long as it's under 5 megabytes. I suggest linking every document in a Word document. And then let's say it's a Google Drive, you have everything housed in a Google Drive. You put the name of the document and the link to the document, and it's on a Word doc or a Google Doc. You print a PDF and attach it, and they have everything. They have the disclosure summary, the documents, anything, the application signed by the seller, anything that you want them to have. That way it's like, hey, it's in your inbox. When you made your appointment, you got it. We're working efficiently in 2025. Request as well the meeting minutes. It may look like a simple community, but you do not know what's going on, what the board is talking about. Hey, we want to erect the fence. We want to update the sign that comes into the community, or we want to establish one because there was never one there before. Like, you want to know when these expenses or rule changes are being talked about, because that will give you insight into how it will affect your customer. And as well as screening requirements, if any. If the community has them, income, assets, employment, all the things. What are the requirements? Do they require to, deposit a certain amount of money into the community? West Boca is huge on that. They have membership fees in the community. And so you want to know if you have to leave a check of $55,000 at the gate before you can walk into this beautiful community. That's good to know. Okay. So knowing as much as possible is the name of the game. The more you have, the more you know, the better you can navigate the process, because at the end of the day, the sellers and buyers, they do not do this every day, but you do. This, you live, breathe, and work real estate. This is your career. This is your passion. You love helping people, or at least those are all the posts that I see on social media. This is how you show it. You show up and you do the work, and the work talks for itself, right? You show the people, hey, this is how I'm going to help you get this condo. This is what you got to know about this specific community. Are you still comfortable in moving forward? Yes. Okay, this is the process. This is what it looks like. This is what you know that's upcoming. You are a wealth of information for your clients and customers about your number one product, real estate, your high ticket sale, real estate, everything that has to do about real estate, you know, in the community that you serve, you are that source. So the more you know, the better. So as promised, there is a cheat sheet that is provided, and you can go ahead and scan that QR code. It's going to take you to a page to rate this presentation. Let me know if there's more information that you would love to learn from me. If you want to go deep dive and not only condos and co-ops and HOAs, but do just singularly just one governing type. I've been toying with the idea. I like to lump them all together because it is what it is, but there is still so much information that needs to be given in that cheat sheet. What you'll see is the Florida statutes, FAR forms and documents that have been provided for as guides that you can download and have available for your customers. Everything that you need in order to make it happen. We have templates in there for additional terms and conditions that can assist. Again, I tell everybody, it's like, you don't have to use everything, but use it as a way of helping you and gaining more information. The more you know, the better. I've linked the municipal resources so that if you do get into any situation in a particular county, what those resources are. I've placed the contact information for the Ombudsman Department, which is actually housed in Fort Lauderdale. It's interesting to me that the Ombudsman Department, which is the department that oversees the condominiums, the co-ops, and the HOAs, all governing homeowners, all governing association types for residential property. That's where you submit complaints when they're doing the things they're not supposed to do, when they're going against statute. This is not who you call if you have an issue with an application. You call your civil rights department in the municipality, and they will handle any issues when it comes to, hey, my buyer who has a 700 credit score was denied access into this community and rejected because of credit. Does that make sense? The requirement is 680. They have 723. Here's a document, and they got denied. And they have the assets and all the other things that they asked for. Yeah, you call your civil rights department in the municipality, and that's also linked in the cheat sheet for you. I'll make sure that Gabby and the team have the direct link for this, so that when you get the post-call wrap-up notes, you can also go and download it there. If you're driving right now and just listening to me in the car, I want you to have all this information, because at the end of the day, this is what helps. Knowing who to call, when to call, and when. Because have I had situations where I had to call the civil rights department? Mm-hmm. Yes, all the time. I call them and I'm here like, hey, this is what's going on in this community. This is the issue that we ran into. And they will call the association. Well, they will send a demand letter to the association to pass over all of the notes, the application, and start reviewing that process. And usually that gets the associations right. It puts them in their place. Do you want to do that? You know, people are human, and what my mom used to say, cuando tú pisas un callo, when you get on that last little nerve with someone, you really want to be strategic in the way that you maneuver with other human beings. You know, when people have a certain way of doing things, it's literally that's the last resort. Had a file last year that unfortunately that was the case. There's lawsuits in place right now. Thank God it's not with any of the realtors or the professionals that were title and everything like that. It's against the association because they were blatantly denying based on what they perceive was what they want in their community, and they had everything on paper that they asked for. I guess they just didn't have the other thing that they wanted either, and it just, it is what it is. We live in a community where things can happen, and this was in Lauderhill. I was incredibly surprised. All right, guys, thank you so much for your time. I know that it's a lot of information. I want to open this up to questions, comments, ideas, concerns, ways that I can support you. Feel free to, was there anyone in the chat making, oh, I see chat has things here. Okay, we had a question. What is the difference between the governing documents and the bylaws? The bylaws are part of the governing documents. It's one of the foundational documents for the community. So, for example, in the association foundational documents, you have the Articles of Incorporation, the Declaration of Condominium, bylaws, rules and regulations, frequently asked questions, end of year financial statement, and budget. These are the required documents. And then when you get into the SIRS, MERS, turnover, those are additional inspection reports that are required, right? So the foundational documents is when they establish this community as a HOA, as a co-op, as a condominium. This is saying this is the reason why we are establishing the bundle of rights in this land to be as such. And these are the ways that we're going to govern this community. So the bylaws, I know a lot of people use that word a lot, but interchangeably, it is the governing documents that are as a whole. The bylaws are the ones that actually get amended the most, especially when new laws or statutes come in place that void out or nullify that particular bylaw for that community. And so they need to come back into session, the board, and update that bylaw and record it into the statutes. I mean, into the county records so that everybody knows, hey, we became in compliance. I know that we couldn't do that before, but now we're doing this. Okay. So the bylaws are just the part of how everything is being run for the association. And the whole set of documents is the way they stand. This is who we are and what we're about. And these are our rules, and that's how we're going to do it. One of the huge things about the governing documents, there are documents that have to be actualized every year. We have our budget, our year-end financial statement, which is the last audited financial. It could be by an accountant. It could be by the board itself. They sat there and said, yeah, the monies were spent that way, right? That is an actualized document. It has to be updated. And the frequently asked questions has to be updated every year. Do not accept a document from 2015, 1992, or 1973 when they recorded the documents. It's like, so what you're saying, my fees are $70 now? No, they have to be updated every year. Do not give a receipt without the updated FAQs. Don't. It's an invalid receipt. You didn't get all the documents that you were supposed to get. And again, it's an unwaivable right. Now, when you consummate or close the sale, your rights are done. You did everything you were supposed to do as an adult, but have people gone to court for less? Yes. So document every ask, every question, everything that you needed about this association, and document if it came back or not. And you tell your customer, hey, I've requested these documents. You have a right to it. You can close without it. Your call. Your call. You're the adult here. You're going to live here. The frequently asked questions is a summary of the current set of documents of the community and what people usually question. Dues, leases, restrictions, things of that nature. It's a one pager to the 500-page documents that you're giving someone. Literally. That's what the frequently asked questions are. It's a summary of what you're about to read in all these documents, but the most important ones are right up front. Buenos días, tengo un cliente que quiere comprar un condo, pero tiene un record criminal de hace 20 años que estuvo en la cárcel. ¿Qué pasa en ese caso? Los rechazan. Okay, so the question is, there's a client, they have a criminal record from 20 years ago, and that's a case-by-case situation. Again, their club, their rules. Have I seen people with a record get accepted into communities? Yes. Have I also seen them get denied? Yes. It can go both ways. That question has to be asked to the particular association, and hopefully before any monies get turned over, because it should be a question that they can easily answer based on the documents, the rules, and what's been created for that community. So that is literally case by case. It depends on the community and if they're opening there. Maybe it was so long ago, maybe it was petty, maybe it was not something so serious, maybe they've reinstituted themselves in society and have qualifiers that can help their application. But at the end of the day, the club itself has to say, yeah, here we're okay with it. It was 20 years ago, we don't have a problem with it. And then there could be ones that say, no. Hi, Melissa, you have a question?
Hi, yes, Michelle, thank you. Going back to the milestone inspection, like the Rider A that you were talking about, it's the first time I hear about this.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So you're going back to that, the listing agent is the one really that's supposed to fill that out, right? Because they're the ones that know everything about their building. I can't like pre-fill that for them, correct? If I'm representing the buyer.
So best practice, you always have the seller complete the document, not even the listing agent. If it's not on the MLS, what I request all the time is saying, hey, don't mark it as an attachment to the contract, meaning section 19, you mark Rider A, and then you make an additional term and condition that says seller will prepare and provide Rider A within X days of effective date, with all sections completed, because we already know humans be human and they skip what they need to do. The seller is a member of the association. Seller pays their dues. Seller has a right to this information. Now, one of the things that I always get pushback from, especially when we're doing our listing launch services, we do a lot of condos. And I reach out to the association. There in the cheat sheet, you will see that we linked the notice to association. The NTA is a document that's been available since 2000. The information still applies, it's still good. But what that does is it's a seller authorization to the association to give the listing agent all the information that they're requesting, and to treat the listing agent as like the owner. The rights I have, give it to the agent as well. What they ask, give it to them, right? As the buyer's agent, don't fill out disclosures that the buyer has no idea.
Exactly.
The MLS is not warranted.
Right.
These disclosures are supposed to be given before you make an offer, because the buyer needs to know fees, restrictions. They need to know if there are special assessments. How do they know? And you're helping them, you're facilitating this conversation between buyer and seller on behalf of your buyer. So you're filling out with information from the MLS, and the MLS is not warranted. You have no idea this listing agent just copied an old listing and kept it moving. So the best thing that you can do is mark it as an attachment, add in the additional terms and conditions that the seller will prepare and provide within X period of amount of time, and then the buyer will review. The buyer still reserves their rights throughout the thing until they get all documents.
Isn't
If it's
that
a
a little
condominium.
bit, well, I guess with condos right now being so slow to sell, but in a normal market where everybody wants to put an offer, I guess listing agents wouldn't be so diligent in providing this before getting an offer. they're so laid back. I mean, they're not, you know, the response is always like, just send me an offer. It's like they want to continue with the way they've always been doing things. And I just find it hard to get all of these things before even putting an offer.
Right. So you put in the offer, but make it contingent. So all of this stuff is contingent. If you have a condominium, most of the terms that make it contingent on docs are already in the writer themselves. The disclosure has to happen. It has to happen, and it needs a confirmation that it's accurate. If not, what if you have the wrong dues? What if you had no idea that there's a litigation in your financing? What if you have special assessments and it's gonna blow the monthly dues to pieces, and then you can't get finance, or the buyer doesn't want to pay all that money? You're wasting your time. But you can make a timetable that says, hey guys, I understand you put this on the market, you don't have all the information, but I need you to get it now. And I'm
So
making our
basically what
offer
we're
contingent
asking
on this
for is the
information.
writer A, for them to fill out writer A, right? That's the one that we need them to fill out.
For a condominium is writer A, for a homeowners association is writer B, for a co-op is co-op 1. Those are the FAR addenda that attach to the FAR bar contract. Very important, because I noticed that a lot of people will use the CRISP writers, the CRSP writers. Look at the letter. You'll see the letters are going to be different for each of the writers. If your writer on the contract, section 19 says it's A, and the one that you have filled out is H or something, that's not the one for that attaches to the contract. It's referencing language in another contract that doesn't apply to yours, and it will create ambiguity and challenges. And in other words, you don't have a defendable contract if something goes sideways. So it's very important that the letter referenced in section 19 is the exact same letter of the addenda that you are using. It's one of the key ways that the FAR was able to help us in making sure that we were using the appropriate forms for the appropriate contract. So writer A is the condominium disclosure. Writer B is the homeowners association disclosure. And yes, if they didn't take the time to upload it into the MLS or attach it to your showing time so that you got it right away, you can give it to your buyer so that they have it. Because, you know, not everyone's awesome, and it's okay. Humans be human. We help them at that point and say, hey, we need to make sure that we both, your office and my office, protect ourselves when we're in this transaction, and everybody has the information that they have. So part of the additional terms is that the seller complete this within X period amount of time, okay? That way we have the right information, they call the association and get things done. So we all have clarity and we don't waste time. I don't want my buyer to spend money on applications for a community they can't even afford. They can't not even afford, but they can't be in because of whatever reason. And here I'm paying $100 to the association and $200 to the property management firm and another $75 for a rush fee. Dio padre. ¿Y qué más? One more. So
Michelle, sorry, are these inspections required by the bank if they're getting a loan, or it's something, a disclosure, an inspection that as the buyer they want to get, that they need?
so now we're talking about the SIRS, MERS, and turnover inspection, right?
The turnover inspection and
The SIRS and MERS. So these are rights to the buyer to have these reports. And these reports are summaries of the health of the construction of the building. So far, I have not seen any requirements from our lenders to have this, but if there's a lender in the room, sometimes we get lucky and there's one in here that can give us some insight if there is any coming up. I have not seen a request for the SIRS and MERS from the lender, but in the same token, I'm a special breed of transaction coordinator. The moment that I get all my documents, I also share them with the lender because they are going to need it to give it to their condo department. So I'm not sure if their condo department is also asking for this. That's the behind the veil. I don't have much information about. All I know is that if they've never outwardly requested it from me, if there has been a check mark on yes on these reports being required. Does that answer your question? That it literally would be finding out what the lender, what they would need. Are you good, Melissa? Did that answer your question?
Yes, I'm good. It's just that they muted me. Thank you.
Ah. All right. So let's see here. Okay, so yeah, that was a question between all and what? What if someone takes advantage of the automatic contract cancellation due to the requirements on the condo and or HOA writer? Who is to blame? Do I as a TC need to push for the extension of deadline, or is it sufficient that I remind everyone of the deadline? Wonderful question. A transaction coordinator is not the agent. The agent is the one with the fiduciary duty. The transaction coordinator is the one that has overview over the transaction and alerts their agent of what's happening and what's coming up. Okay. So with that said, the TC will tell you, hey, this is coming up. We may want to extend it because we don't have it. But the one that needs to have the conversation and negotiate it for it to happen is the agent. The agent still needs to go and talk, go cross the aisle and say, hey, friend, we've tried, we've done, this is where we are. We're going to need to amend the closing date and the association approval. And we're going to need your help in pushing this forward if we're trying to get to closing, right? That's if people are wanting to, stay in the transaction. Buyer still wants to buy and seller still wants to sell. In the event people are trying to wiggle themselves out, you can't stop people from doing what people want to do. So yes, people will use the term to get out of the contract. I have used it many of times and say, hey, your HOA disclosure says that you didn't get your approval. You can use that to get out. If they challenge it and they say, hey, I want to know when you submitted, and you were like, hey, the HOA disclosure does not have a requirement for the buyer to submit their application, just to receive their approval by X period of time. We received the application on this date. We called the association on this date. They said that they would process it within this time period if we submitted it by this date, and we did, and they didn't have it. We're out. Give me my money. Right? Back up what you're doing with, the intention. Even if the intention changes, the point is when you're walking with the seller, you're protecting the seller's time. When you're walking with the buyer, you're protecting deposits, people's hard-earned money. So knowing the documents that are being signed and your wiggle room in each scenario is important. I've had properties that have an HOA and I'm like, hey, friend, there's a homeowners association here and you don't have a disclosure. I think the seller needs to provide it to you. And they're like, you know what? Hush on that for right now. Because my buyer's on the fence. There's another property they like and they may want to get out of this contract. You have no idea of what people are planning. So the more you protect your side of the transaction with the information and knowledge that you have, the better for you. Hey, friend, I saw you raise your hand. Oh, you can't speak? Did you put it in the chat?
Okay, I figured it out. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
So I have another question regarding the condo writer. Thank you for your explanation. That is really helpful. Actually, this whole class is like one of the best I've ever attended. So thank you, Michelle. The condo writer, what I feel is missing is always the condo information, like who is the association, who is the manager, who is the phone, and like why is an HOA disclosure not necessary? Because they actually have an extra page with all that info. Condo writer doesn't have it, and I feel like, especially when you represent the buyer side, it's really a miss. Like, okay, who do I call? Who do I like? How do? Yeah.
Great question. And we kind of lightly touched it. The seller in a condominium initiates the process. So because the seller has to initiate the process, not only for a condominium, but for an HOA, the seller also has to give instruction to the buyer. It's kind of like you're initiating. What does that mean? You start it, you commence it, but then now you have to communicate. Hey, I called my association. Here's their contact information. You have to do an application. Here's the application. I signed my part at the bottom so you can go ahead and submit it. Because you know, how many applications have you received that says you need the seller's name, phone
Yeah.
number, email, address,
And they have to
firstborn.
sign it
They
often.
actually have to sign the document. Is
Yeah.
it wet signed or digital? That is why the seller has to initiate the process. They have to call the association. They have to get the instruction. They have to fill out the documents. If the documents themselves have sensitive information, which I have seen that too, because I don't know why people think emails are secure. They're not. Check your E&O and make sure you have your really good uh, um, digital security policy, because if anytime your email gets corrupted and people's social security numbers, birth dates, and things get into a bind, that is one heck of a lawsuit. Just saying. Emails are not secure. Be careful, right? We can't go back to fax. Just be careful. Keep everybody's information between the relevant parties always. But the seller has to initiate the process. The seller has to provide the contact information. How's the buyer going to apply? The seller has to start. The seller has to start and provide instruction for the buyer in order for them to get things done. That is why the first language is seller is going to initiate on a condo and buyer is going to apply. All within the same, if you left it blank, 5-day period.
Yeah.
Now, again, when I say this with all of my heart, agents, you have the handle of the story that the buyer and the sellers are going to experience. I know everybody wants to sell quickly. I know everybody wants to get out of this quick. But if your third party that you have to rely on, the association tells you 45 business days, so 45 business days. It's 45 business days. Account for that. If you know that the approval can show up day of closing at 12 o'clock and we're signing at 3, make the expiration of the clause day of closing. You can add a 0. Okay? You can add a 0. If you're on the seller side, counter for 0. You have the control of the story and the experience for the buyers and sellers. And the more information you know, the better that you can navigate this process. If Melissa, if you're countering, if you're putting in additional terms and conditions, I need the seller to complete this within 3 business days from effective date, because you know they have to call the association, confirm all the details, make sure Section 10 is completely completed accurately. 3 business days is a good amount of time to call the association and get it done. Well, that means the buyer is not going to apply until we get that back. So from the date of you giving me that document, we have 5 days to submit the application. You control the narrative. And because now we know we have 5 days to apply from when they give us, that's already 8 days. How long does the closing date have to be in order for the approval process to come back and forth? Plan accordingly. I always tell everybody, if you're doing a condo, do 45 to 60 days. It's very easily that you can eat those up on a before, if you love the language. As soon as we get our approval and lender, title, and association are ready, we'll close, but we need to have enough time so that people are not stressing out. The worst thing you can do is give a buyer an ulcer running to do a bunch of things with these tight timetables when you're still waiting for information, right? We wish everybody would play the same game and do the same things, but we have to account for humans being human. And so, hey, I understand. Let's make sure that the timing is accurate so that we can set proper levels of expectation for buyer and seller, and everybody move accordingly. You have that. Jose Rojas asked, oh, did I answer your question, Yana? Perfect, thank you. Jose Rojas asked, should I discard or discourage a potential buyer to place an offer if first right of refusal exists? Buyer will have to pay inspections, appraisals. No. Here's what you need to know about first right of refusal. You know that first part where it says you will know within 5 days? If there is a first right of refusal on the community, that, again, this is if the seller prepared the disclosure properly or the listing agent and all the information is there. I mean, we're making a lot of assumptions for really great people to be doing really great things. So in that 5-day period, that the association is reviewing the contract and acknowledging if they're, we're going to pass on this. You can make your story be contingent on that process, but you need to know if it exists so that your buyer is not paying for inspections and doing all these things. Because what if, right? If the association is going to take over the contract, a member of the association wants, the neighbor next door is like, oh, they've negotiated a great deal and I can make my unit bigger, right? That's usually the one that's going to buy the property. And from every time I've seen someone exercise it, it's the neighbor that wants to make their unit bigger, right? If that's what ends up happening, then you want to know that as quickly as possible. So knowing that up front is going to be good. It's not, what if they say no? I mean, it's just one of those things that can happen. They can take over the contract or they cannot. So if the buyer really loves the community and wants to live there, you can't discourage them from being where they want to be. They just need to be aware, hey, there's a process in this community, and it could be that the association member may take the contract, and you have to be okay with that. And when you become a member of the association, if they don't want your contract, you can also do the same. There's pros and cons, but adults make adult choices. So definitely let them know what is the process and make informed decisions, and make your contract have that process built in. Let that story be built around what's important to your customer so that they can make the right decision strategically throughout it. Great question. Ricardo, when you say the seller needs to initial the application, that means the seller needs to send you the current. Most of the time, sellers send you on. Correct. Great question, Ricardo. Yes, the seller is responsible into initiating the process. They have to give you the right contract, the right contact information, all the things. They have to give it to you because they are a member of the association. The moment they tell you to do it, you can say back and say, hey, you agreed here that you were going to initiate the approval process. Please give me what I need in order for the buyer to apply. If you need more time, because not only do you have to initiate, but I have to apply if it's a condo, we may need to amend this for you to go do that part that you agreed to do already. Great question. But yes, they do. Because one of the things that happens, and it happens all the time, unfortunately, the realtor, the listing agent finds an old application from 2 years ago. How many times do people turn over property management firms? And they're like, here's the application, go apply. You fill it out, you put in your money order, you send it all over, they cash the check. And then you're like, we applied. And then it comes back, hey, from the estoppel, there's an application process and the application's not in. No, but we applied with the association that the listing agent gave us. And then all of a sudden, we sent $300 to a property management firm that no longer manages the community. Seller had to initiate. And because the seller had to initiate, it's at that point could be considered, with a great lawyer, seller's default for not initiating correctly. That's why when you read your contract, you know who's responsible for what, and you let them do what they need to do in order to honor that term. Don't do it on behalf of that person, because if you've opened the door and doing one thing for the other party, why aren't you doing the other things? It's very important. I'm with the buyer. I'm asking for buyer rights. You are initiating, I'm applying. You need to initiate, I will apply. That's our responsibilities. Seller initiate, buyer applies. I will stand on you initiating so that my buyer can apply. Stay in your lane, please. Do not do anything for the other party. We all want to be team players. I love that for us. But when it goes to court, that is the number one question that's going to come out of the judge. Well, you went and got the application for the buyer. Why didn't you do this other thing for the seller? You filled out the thing for the seller. Why didn't you fill out this other thing for the seller? Let those that are responsible to do the things that they had to do in that transaction do it. And you just ask, because you already agreed upon it in paper. You're just asking for the things that are already agreed upon and waiting for them to act and documenting. I requested this day, I requested that day, I requested again this day, and it still hasn't come back if it did. All you can do is ask, request, and document that it was done. Oh, and by the way, it was changed in the contract that text messages are no longer a valid form of communication. It has to be an email. So just because you text the listing agent and say, hey, I need X, Y, and Z, and they say, yeah, I'll get it back to you, and they never do, the text messages are no longer valid. You have to make sure, hey, thank you so much for responding to my text and letting me know that you're going to get us the application today. Please respond back to this email with the application when it's available, and then keep the train running on that. If asked if a criminal record will affect approval, to answer that question, that's up to the AOR. Agents are getting sued over this and Section 8 questions. Very excellent point. It's up to the association to do their thing. We're not here to answer for third parties. We direct them to the person that has the jurisdiction to answer that question, always. What's your listing launch service? Oh, thank you so much for asking. So when we launch a listing, that's the term itself is letting you know that we're going to prepare it for list. We're going to get the email. We're going to ask for required documents to be done by the seller on the listing. So all the disclosures are done by then. We assist them in getting them done, uploaded into the MLS, especially when it comes to associations. We prepare a one sheet that has all the links that are required for that. We link them to the showing time for showing time requests so that they get their approvals on that as well. There's a laundry list of things that we do, everything having to do from getting it onto the MLS and getting it to active so that everything on your file is ready to go for that. So I feel like in the cheat sheet, there's a link to all of our services and you can read more about it there, but feel free to reach out to me so we can discuss further. The inspection reports are provided by the association. Yes, they are. And is there a formal receipt for the buyer to sign that they have received the docs? Jose, yes, there is. They actually updated the receipt. So there was one that we've had from 1990, no sé qué, that all it said was the name of the association and you would click, yes, it's a condo or if it's a co-op, and that they got the governance form for any of them, right? Now it's a new form that says, did you get the condo docs for the community and what date? Did you get the SIRS, the MERS, and the turnover inspection, and at what date? And then when those things are finally dated, then the buyer signs. And it's in Form Simplicity. It's also in your Florida Interactive Forms in .loop as well. So the receipt is there. Issue the receipt when you've officially gotten all your documents. Always. When you know that everything that it says on the writer was received and that they marked yes, and if you don't have on 10A, B, and C marked at all, then when your request is for documents, you're going to put the reports and say, or written statement not applicable from the association. That way they know we need confirmation that the SIRS, MERS, or turnover is applicable or not. Just because the building was built in 1970, we, as reasonable human beings, we can think, oh, probably they turned over in 1975, right? The turnover inspection doesn't apply here, right? Don't make assumptions. Just ask and let them say no. And I was like, that's what I thought, but thank you for confirming for that, because if someone says, hey, this was actually required and you didn't ask for it, you get into that, why didn't you? Why didn't you ask for it? So make a template, make it standard, and just let them tell you not applicable. Let the person responsible to say not applicable. Don't make the decision for others. That way it's in writing. It was asked and answered. Or asked and never answered. That also is a very high probability. Well, everyone, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Is there any other questions before we close the session? Well, again, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. I know that it was a lovely 2 hours to spend together with lots and lots of information. As always, you can find me with the great team at New World Title Davie. We're here to support you in everything that we can. The Extreme by LPT Realty team, we're here to support you any way that we can. And literally, if we've never worked together before, no worries. You can always shoot me over an email. I love helping my agents, anyone in the real estate community, the best that I can with the knowledge I have. If I don't know it, I will point you to the direction of where you can get that answer. So I love being a resource. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.